Man, welcome to the next stage. I'm so excited. My name's Rob Stout, and I want to invite you to a resource that is dedicated 100% to you and to your personal development. I mean, where else in your life do you have a resource where somebody just wants to pour into you and give you resources every time we chat? That's what the next stage is about. Our mantra around here is Summit Life's Climb. It's all about you taking the next step in life, getting to where you were created to go. And I'm excited to be on this journey with you. It's a journey that I'm on. I'm maybe a little farther down the road, maybe have some things to lend, maybe some pointers. But man, I'm super excited about the next stage. This is the very first one of these podcasts. There's a whole team of us who are working together and super excited to get rolling with the next stage. So welcome to the inaugural first ever episode of the next stage. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that absolutely hits every man I know. That is the topic of going it alone. And here's what I know about you. This is you. So if you're out there listening, watching, whatever, raise your hand, be like, how does he know this is me? This is you. You are a self-starter. You are self-made. You're a go-getter. You're somebody that loves to get things done. You are a doer. If something needs done, you're on it. You're not one of these guys who they're like, man, I wish he would get off the couch. I wish he would, get moving, show a pulse. Is he even alive? You're not one of those guys at all. In fact, you're the guy that they have to say, hey, will he slow down for a minute? Will he just pause? Will he take a break? In fact, it's not good for him to go at such a pace. Why doesn't he just slow down? You're a guy who gets things done. Now, time out. If you are a guy who's on the couch, asleep half your life, doesn't have a pulse, we're glad you're here too, and we just hope you get with the program. But I'm talking to men who are self-starters and who are self-made and who get it done and just go at life with a passion. That is a very good thing because people around you rely on you. They love that you're there. They lean on you. You're great at what you do because people depend upon you. They lock into what you bring to the table, to what you have to offer, and you get stuff done, and you're not a guy who's going to die someday and your last thought's going to be, man, I wish I would have done something. You're going to be somebody who looks back at the end of their days and looks at a very fruitful past, who just has poured his life out into different things. However, there is a problem with being somebody who's driven so hard. The destructive thing about that, the problem, although there's so many good things, the problem with somebody who is such a go-getter is that there are some destructive things and some problems that jump in the way, aren't there? For example, I'll bet you carry a lot of people's weight around you. Think about it. How many things are you carrying that belong to other people? How heavy is that backpack that's on your back? I mean, you've got not just your own stuff, the thing you're figuring out in life. You got, maybe you're married. I don't know. Maybe you have an ex-wife. Maybe you have a girlfriend that you're dating, but you've got some of her stuff. Maybe there are kids in your life, your own kids or stepkids or your girlfriend's kids or whatever. You've got things at work and you just carry a lot of weight. The metaphor for your life would be like going backpacking, and it's all fun and you got a plan and you're going up, but you know what? I'm going to grab, this person's stuff and stick it in my backpack. I'm going to grab my buddy Mike. I'm going to grab his stuff and throw it in the backpack. And all of a sudden, everybody else is having a great time around you, but you find yourself really loaded down. I mean, you've got the tent, you've got the food, you've got all the water, you got the sleeping bags, you have all the gear, and everybody else is having a great time, but you feel like a pack mule heading up the trail. Anybody feel like that in life? I know I do a lot. What happens when that hits my life, and I'll bet this is true in your life, is that it creates a deep-seated anger. I mean, you are like the savior in everybody's world. You're the Mr. Atlas, who the picture in the Greek mythology is that Atlas is holding up the globe on his back. And that's what your life feels like. And it creates something inside of you, deep in your gut, that's a deep-seated anger. And I know when that happens in my life, when I start carrying everybody else's stuff and I show up as Super Rob to everybody in my world, It feels good for a while. I mean, it satisfies something deep inside of me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm really valuable around here. But eventually I get really, really ticked off. We get angry about things and we feel like Superman, but all of a sudden we get bogged down and it starts to come out in crazy ways in our life, doesn't it? For example, some destructive tendencies might be able to come out a little bit. Recovery work calls it the cycle of insanity. I go to something that meets a need in my life, and in this case, it would be being big and showing up in other people's lives. I do something that meets a need in my life and meets other people's needs, but it fills something for me. I get bogged down. I get angry. I live out in a cycle of isolation. But eventually I carry more weight because it really does feel pretty good to be so big and large and in charge in other people's lives. I fill more needs. I get angrier. I get more isolated. And eventually I do one of two things. I either explode and kind of vent, kind of volcano going off, or I implode and I start to live in some self-destructive lifestyles. Men, the reason I talk about this topic like this is because I get it. I understand. I went through a prolonged period in my life, and a lot of this podcast of the next stage is going to be sharing with you some of my experiences and not just kind of throwing an emotional smorgasbord on the table. I mean, I've done my recovery work and my therapy in other places. I'm not here to do it in front of you. But I do want to share some stories with you, kind of being a little bit further down the path maybe, or at least alongside of you. Just go, man, I get it. I understand. I get it. There was a prolonged period in my life where going it alone was the thing I chose to do. I had men around me who were with me on my journey several years before, but I had gone through a period where it was really tough. This was called the Great Recession of 2008 through 2012. I had just gone to a new job. I took a new role, and I was in sales. Actually, had come out of the ministry for a season of my life. But I had gotten into a career path, and I thought, you know what? This is going to be great. We're just going to get moving and chart a new course and do some of the other things I loved as a passion on the side. And it was involved in the housing industry. Well, this was in August of 2008. And I thought, you know what? The industry had been down a little bit for a couple years, but man, it was just going to explode. It always did after a recession. Well, those of you who remember what August of 2008 was, remember what October of 2008 was. It was a subprime mortgage crash. And so literally 3 out of 4 housing starts in the United States were completely gone. 3 out of 4. Picture if you're a doctor and 3 out of 4 patients are gone. You can't take care of anybody. If you're in tech and 3 out of 4 of those projects are gone. If you're in engineering and you've got literally 1 out of every 4 opportunities you've had, think of what that would do. My solution at that time was just to work harder. It was to just dig deep and gut it and just go and go and go and go. And eventually I knew I would outrun what was happening and I would just, succeed. That's not what happened. This weight became so heavy in my life that it broke me at a deep level. Again, one of the things we're talking about in the next stage is what happens in real life. And for me, it was medicating what was going on in my life with alcohol. I discovered that if I could just medicate, I could numb what was going on. And so I went to alcohol for an opportunity just to numb what was happening. But eventually it really didn't deliver, and I went back to work, and I was slugging it out every day, and I had 3 young kids at the time and a marriage that was, I was just working on and all of that. But I would go back to alcohol to ease that pain, and it would kind of deliver a little bit, but not really. And I would find myself empty, so I'd go back for more, and it was that cycle of insanity, and it started to break my life. This was all part and parcel of going it alone. Instead, of finding other men who I could lean into and I could just say, hey, I'm really hurting. I'm not doing well. This is really hard. I leaned into my pride and my ability to just be Superman in my world. And I went it alone. And I paid a huge price. Going it alone does that in our lives. It leaves us in a place where we find destructive tendencies just circling out and popping out of nowhere in our life. Man, it may not be drinking for you. It may be anger. It may be gambling. It may be porn. It may be maybe something a little bit more subtle, like just investing in lots of things and creating a lifestyle for yourself. There is a better way than going it alone. Perhaps you've heard of Aaron Ralston. He's the hiker that was the canyoneer that was hiking in southwest Utah. He wrote a book called Between a Rock and a Hard Place and was made into a really cool movie called 127 Hours. But Aaron knew what he was doing, but he broke the number one rule of canyoneering, and that was never climb alone. Ended up slipping in a canyon and fell in between a rock. A boulder rolled over on him and trapped his arm, and he was trapped there for 127 hours. Eventually, he had to cut his own arm off, and this was really gruesome. If you read the book, it's like, oh my gosh, just to hear what happened. The movie, it could have been a little more gory. I would have loved that a little bit more, but he cut his own arm off, and he's living the rest of his life with a prosthetic arm, all because he went it alone. And man, I wonder, either in a real way or metaphorically, how many of us are walking around with scars in our life because of going it alone? The good news is very simply this: it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. Men, you need men around you. You need really strong men who can come around you, who get you, who are wired like you, who are men who aren't kind of the, oh man, watch it, don't, watch yourself, don't hurt yourself in that, not guys who are passive in life, but men who are made like you, who just can come alongside of you and hear your story. Men who get it because they're ballers just like you in life, but who get it and who understand you and who can help you and be with you in your journey. I bet if you were asked Aaron Ralston, he would say, yeah, I wish I had somebody with me because I was stuck for 127 hours. I wish I had somebody with me in the season I was going through. In fact, it was really good men who jumped down in the canyon of my life when I was going through that and helped remove that boulder that was on me, called, eventually it was an addiction to alcohol, who jumped in with me and said, we want to help you. Men, the gold nugget that I want to leave you is a thousands of year old proverb. Comes out of the Bible, a book of wisdom in the Proverbs, out of the wisest man who was ever alive, named Solomon. It says this: plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. These are little proverbs, little gold nuggets that the wisest man alive wrote down. And he even said, listen, plans fail for lack of counsel. This was the wisest man alive. He even noticed, but with many advisors, plans succeed. Men, going it alone is a recipe for failure. And perhaps you're experiencing this right now in your life. You're like, I'm very competent. I'm smart. I'm talented. I get things done. I'm wise. I have social poise. I'm really well educated. I'm making it to the top of my career. But eventually, isolation and going it alone is going to hurt you. It does every man that I'm in relationship with. They all hit this point of saying, I went it alone. I need to find other men who get me, who are around me. I want to ask you this question. Do you see how high the stakes are here in this issue? Perhaps you've gone through this going it alone cycle and you've had a failed marriage. It's okay. Many have. Maybe you've failed in your career because you've gone it alone. You've taken some shortcuts. You didn't have men around you. I'm a sports fan, so I follow a lot of stories in sports. There's a story about Urban Meyer, who's a national championship winning coach who was in a bar one night, his own bar, named after him, and was involved with a young woman who was starting to grind and dance around him. And it's like, come on, man, you're Urban Meyer. You don't know that somebody is sitting about 10 feet away with a cell phone? But his story is not just that happened, but that there wasn't a wingman in his life who said, you know what, Herb, it's time to go, buddy. Or asking this woman, hey, you know what, take a step away. You know, my buddy's had too much to drink, and they just got him out of here. Maybe it has wrecked your life. He lost a job in the NFL because of it. He was also a poor NFL coach. He was great in college, but bad in the NFL. But he lost his job because of that. The organization was like, you don't know. Maybe that's happened to you. Maybe you've damaged your kids. Maybe you've had physical consequences. Maybe you've got high blood pressure or something like that in your life. But there are marks all over your life of going it alone. Men, the stakes are high, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can live a different way. It is not, if you're at a stage in your life where you might be like, hey, listen, this is as good as it gets. This is not as good as it gets. You can have a cycle of change in your life that takes you in a totally different trajectory in your life. The call to action that I want to invite you to today is very simply this. Let us help you summit life's climb. Let us help you lean into what we're talking about. Lean in, listen, pass this along to other men. Let's create something unique around the globe where men from all over the world can listen every week, every other week, and listen to it and pass it along and allow this stuff to sink into your life. I would invite you to lean into something that is 100% dedicated to helping you summit life's climb. This resource is here for you. We ask very little of you other than to be tuned in to your development and to your growth. That's number one. Listen. Number two is pass it on to other men. The third thing I would ask of you is that you would very simply email me, Rob at Sherpa5280.com. Rob, R-O-B, at Sherpa, S-H-E-R-P-A, the numbers 5280.com. And say, you know what? Gosh, I would love to not go it alone anymore. Very simple email. You don't have to write me War and Peace. You don't have to write me a novel or anything like that. But just say, hey, I want to not go it alone. Because here's what the vision is to put men together in what we're calling ascent teams. To put men together from all over the world where they have the opportunity to be in cohorts of other men who are pursuing this life together. So I want to invite you to do that very simply. 1, listen. 2, pass it on. 3, email me. Title, Don't Go It Alone. Rob at Sherpa5280.com. Man, I will promise you, I will make a promise that if you will lean into this kind of a life of not going it alone, but doing it with other strong men around you, it will change your life. I had settled into this is as good as it gets. Maybe I'm just bent for living this way. But some other men reached into me, reached down to me, helped pull me up, connected me with other men, and it took me on a trajectory of my life that I love right now, part of which is getting to do a podcast to help other men. So I'm so excited that you've joined us. Thank you for being part of the very, very first Next Stage Men's Podcast. And I invite you to be with us next time, probably 2 weeks when we publish this. I invite you to be with us on our next episode. Share this with another man, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to you later.